Good evening and welcome to this very special live show. This one will be unlike any of our previous live shows. There's a clue in the hat and the glasses. Under normal circumstances, we like to look forward at machines, systems and solutions to come within this industry. But just once, we're going to take a moment to look back. I'm going to do so in the company of one of the nicest guys it's been my good fortune to meet. Let me just give you some context before we get underway. A month or two ago, I was invited to the Czech Republic for the Bobcat Demo Days event. Bobcat took the opportunity to show off a whole range of highly advanced tech, including an OLED heads-up display capable of feeding information to a machine operator right there on his screen, and the Max control that allows an operator to drive a Bobcat machine using a games console style handset plus a mobile phone as well. Here is just a taster of what the demo days look like. I'm Mark Anthony of Diggers and Dozers, and we're here in the Czech Republic with Bobcat. Yeah, pretty much everywhere I looked, there were shiny new machines and incredible technology, precisely as you'd expect from a global manufacturer. But even global manufacturers have to start somewhere. And also present at the demo days was a guy called Joe Keller. Joe's father and his uncle designed and developed the Keller loader, which was to be the forerunner of the Bobcat skid steer loader that we know and love today. As you're about to hear, Joe and his sister have spent more than 2 decades charting the design and development of the original Keller loader and its evolution. But this is way more than some industrial history project for Joe. In fact, he gets quite misty-eyed when he's speaking about how his father and his uncle built a single machine that ultimately spawned that global company. Now, just one final thing before I do hit the play button. You might notice that the Joe Keller's hat has got some writing on it. During the demo days, he collected the signatures of all of those taking part, and I'm proud to say that my name is on his hat somewhere. Now, you all know that there is a model up for grabs this evening. That's what it looks like. It's a big old beast. Bobcat telescopic handler, actually hauled back from the demo days. And I know some of you have tried to jump the gun and type Bobcat into the chat. Wrong name. Wrong name. What you need to type into the chat when I can find it is Keller. Keller, Keller. Keller. Type that into the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm going to find the video that this evening is all about. So bear with me 1 second, just while I find it on my hard drive.
This is Joe Keller, and I'm here to, I was invited here to be part of this demo days to be able to just talk about history of how the Bobcat got started. It was late 1956 or sometime in the summer of '56. One of my dad and uncle's customers, Eddie Velo, came to them with a problem of cleaning manure from turkey barns. And then they thought about that for a while, and then they come up with a solution. They came up with something that they thought might be a solution, and then they went out to visit with Eddie about it, and then they all three felt it could be had potential. So they moved forward to build it, and Eddie never agreed to purchase it unless it worked, but he would pay for the materials if it didn't work, and my dad and uncle would forfeit their time if it didn't work. But it was very shortly after it was delivered, early '57, that it was obvious it was going to work. So then and they sent an invoice February 4th of '57, and then Eddie Velo, he paid for it March 7th of '57. And then Then after that, they built 6 more between February of 57 and mid-summer of 58. And during the middle of that summer, one of their uncles, Anton Christensen, introduced them to Les Melro. Anton was already selling Melro products. So he introduced them to Les Melro, and then they showed them the Keller loader. And then the Melros invited them to bring a Keller loader to the 1958 Minnesota State Fair to be on display at the Melro location. The interest at the fair sparked a manufacturing contract right after the fair. Part of the contract was they never did sell their patent. They just awarded Melro exclusive manufacturing rights on a royalty basis. But then part of the contract required Dad and Searle to become Melro employees to develop the loader. So even though the next loader built was a Melro loader, Dad and Searle and 3 other existing employees were given the task to build whatever parts Dad and Searle asked them to build, and that was Don Lloyd, Nels Nelson, and Jim Toyne. So together those 5 built the first loader at Melro. Then they built 5 more, and then Searle, at that point, my Uncle Searle took one of those on the road to sell it, just loaded it in the back of a pickup and went on the road to sell it. And then he was in sales the rest of his career. So in a sense, he never came back after he took that first one out. He continued on sales, and Dad continued in the shop, improving and making new models. A lot of the improvements, though, were based on Searle's input from customers. If there was something breaking all the time, then he would call Dad and tell him what was happening, and then Dad, and I'm sure Dad got other people involved to create a fix for that. I wish I knew all those names so I could give him credit, but I don't. So, but there was, after the first 6 machines were built, there's a lot more people became involved, and then it's what you see today. Not many people have the privilege and the honor that I have to be able to share their family's history and have other people know what it is and want to hear more. So I'm just honored to do that, and I know not many people have that privilege and honor, so I'm just not going to waste it. I'll make sure they don't get forgotten, I guess. So the invoice for the first Keller loader was sent out on February 4th, 1957, and it was paid for on March 7th of 57, and I was born on March 4th of 57. So it likely paid for the bill incurred for my delivery. But yeah, so when I was growing up, I took everything for granted. I literally thought that everybody in the world had a Bobcat or 2 whenever they wanted one. I thought everybody had a machine shop in their backyard that they could go make whatever they wanted to with a turning lathe or welders or presses or whatever. But then it took me longer than it should have, but at some point I realized that not very many people have that privilege. And so it was around 1997 when I and my sister Marilyn really got focused on trying to preserve the history. So I've been working on it since 97, so I'd be like 26 years right now. But when I started, I realized that I knew hardly any of it, other than the fact that Dad and Searle built the first Bobcat. I didn't know much of anything else. I knew a few stories, but compared to what I know now, it really was hardly anything. And then when I started talking about history with Dad and Searle, then they really weren't that interested in it either. Not that they weren't interested, but everything that they made, when they made something better than previous, they didn't really remember that, or they didn't. It wasn't important to them anymore. But then when I found the Keller loader that I own, there's only 7 of those, and I found one of them, and it's in perfect condition. So I brought it home, and I invited them over for supper, both of them, but I didn't tell them I had it. And then after supper, I started it up and drove it out of the garage. And it was at that point where they were kind of like a child that found a toy that they had lost for several years. And then they got more interested, and then they started offering information to me instead of me asking them about it. Or like if I'd talk to somebody else and they'd tell me something I didn't know before, then I go talk to Dad and Cyril and say, what do you know about this? Is this true or not? And then they would share the information, but after they saw the Keller loader, then they started telling me stuff without me asking them. So, but it's been 23 years, and luckily I had I did this. I had several goals when I started beyond just recording the history. One was, probably the biggest one was to get it recorded while they were still with us. And then we did a documentary with Prairie Public Television in Fargo, North Dakota. So that documentary is them telling the story, not me telling the story. So to start getting it recorded where they were still here, having a piece of video of them telling their own story, that was done. And then before Dad passed away in 2010, so it was like 13 years of working with him and Cyril. And when by the time he passed away, he knew that we were preserving his history. So that was another goal to make sure they knew it. And then of course I had another 10 years with Cyril, and we continued to talk about stuff. And if there was ever a Bobcat event, I would take Cyril to that whenever I could. And I feel, even though that 18 or that half-hour video, it's got a lot of information, but it still is, out of all the total information with everybody else's stories, with dealer stories, with stories that didn't get part of that video of their own stories, there's at least 80% more to get recorded somewhere. And I've got it recorded, but I don't have it in a fashion that I can publish it. So at some point I need to do that. When they started at Melrose, the first model was an M60, then an M200. And both of those models were what we call the three-wheelers. It was two drivers and a caster wheel in the back. They worked really good on hard ground, hard surfaces like a turkey barn, or a bulk fertilizer, or unloading boxcars from coal or whatever. But once you got in any mud or anything, they would not work. And they actually, the poultry market really took a dive in 1960. I don't know the reason why, I've got to find that out. But they couldn't sell a machine. They had built an inventory of 200 M200s, and they weren't selling, and the decision was almost made by the company to stop producing them. But then Dad went out to the shop and he put a second axle on an M200 and took the caster wheel off, put a second axle on there and connected the two axles with a chain. So now it turned it into a four-wheel drive. And that would be, it's that machine and the next one, because that machine wasn't designed like a skid steer is designed today. It had the same weight on the front wheels as on the back wheels, and it wouldn't turn very well. The drive was exposed, and so once you got into the mud or the manure, deeper stuff that you could drive through, then the chains brought that dirt and manure all the way up through the whole system, and it just wouldn't hold up. So then Dad put together what became the 440, and that was the first machine with the 70-30 balance. For the back is 70% of the weight on the axle, and the front is 30% when it's empty, when the bucket's empty. And then it also had enclosed drive chains. That's where the product that's where it just took off. And the product would have survived on its own at that point, if somebody would have made it, even if Melrose chose not to. But of course they didn't. So, but at that point is when everything took off, because now they could enter any market, any construction, any farm, anything, the landscaping. All of those markets opened up when the four-wheel drive came. And and I call the 400 the 400 is the first four-wheel drive, the first skid steer, But the 440 is the first true skid steer where it's got the 70-30 balance and enclosed chain. So that's definitely the turning point. In '99, my niece nominated them for the National Construction Industry Hall of Fame Award. They won that. Then we had the American Society of Agricultural Engineers Landmark Award. They won that. And then there was the Minnesota Inventors Hall of Fame. They won that. We have a museum display of our own. I have helped with another one. So those are active. And then a little over a year ago, or probably close to 2 years ago now, I nominated them for the National Inventors Hall of Fame Award, and they won that. And that ceremony will be in October of '23 in Washington, D.C., and we'll be out there for that. And then they also asked if I would loan them my Keller loader for a display for Dad and Cyril. Yeah, and I said sure. And then I made a road trip out of it, and I pulled that out all the way from North Dakota to the Alexandria, Virginia, but it's right by Washington, D.C. I pulled that all the way out there, and I stopped at as many Bobcat dealers as I could on the way out. And that was amazing. That was fun. And there again, I wish people could have the same feeling I have when you, in this case, pull into a dealer and they're waiting for you, and they come out and they can't believe that you took the time to stop for them, and they're taking pictures, and they're getting on the machine and taking pictures, and yeah, that was really good. And then I've always thought the history was worth saving or worth recording. If Cyril was here, if he was here today, he'd be on every one of these machines already. You know, so he was a salesman, and he would have been, he'd have been demonstrating these machines today if he was here. And Dad he'd feel the same way too. He might be more interested in how they made something. Cyril would be interested in talking to the customers, but he would also know how they made it. You know, they were both good at mechanics, but yeah, they'd be very impressed. They made it before Dad passed away. They had the $750,000 celebration. I believe that was in 2008. So he saw it expand to that point. Cyril made it to 2020, and he was at the 1 million celebration. So he saw it expand to that point. But Cyril would have saw a little bit more, but neither one of them would have saw how that little Bobcat name that was introduced early in the production has spread into so many different products, as well as the name that they came up with is what people refer to the company as, and all these other products. So they would have felt great.
We made the manure bucket on the first one out of 5/8 rod because we only had a 6-horse motor in there, and we didn't have a lot of push power. We knew if we make too big a teeth, it would be hard to push in, so we made them out of 5/8 rod. Well, when we went to tear this manure loose, one would bend one way and one the other was just all bent up, so we brought it back into the shop, and we was taking them rods out, and then the place there in town, they come in here, he's looking to see what we're doing, and he looked at them, and he says, "Let me go get some rods." He says, "I don't think they'll bend," and he took off. And when he come back, he had the bars out of the old jail. And you couldn't saw them. We had to grind them, cut them off. We had to grind them off to length, and we put them in, and they're still in there today.
So, one of the early buckets of what was a forerunner of the Bobcat skid steer loader was made from the bars of a jail door. Innovation's a marvelous thing, isn't it? Now, if you enjoyed that, there is actually a longer audio-only version of my chat with Joe Keller. I think that was about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. The full-length version is about best part of an hour, I think. And you could always go to your preferred podcast provider and just search for Demolition News Radio, but we've all had a long day, so to save you bother, I've already posted a link in the chat to that, I believe. Have I? Let me try it again now. There we are. You can go and listen to that whenever you feel ready to do so. Now, I am going to go over to the chat very quickly. We do have another film coming up shortly, which means we're going to be on the countdown for the big prize giveaway. Sorry, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat today. So let me go back to the beginning of the chat and see who is with us this evening. Gary Muirhead. I knew Gary would be here. Good evening, Gary. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Peter McKenna's here as well. Peter missed the show this morning, but made up for it this evening. Glenn Johnston's here as well, says good evening all. Good evening to you as well, Glenn. Our superstar resident, Steve Williamson, is here as well. Morning, Steve. Oh, morning, good afternoon, good evening, Steve. Good something or other. Ken Hatcher's here as well. Mark Whiting is here. Ken Hatcher was trying to second guess me, but as you can see across the bottom of the screen, if you would like to be in with a chance of winning that, you need to type the word Keller, Keller, into the chat. Steve Williamson has just finished work. Glenn Johnston's apparently there are no pictures on YouTube, but I think he's now shaken that loose. Nigel Williams is in the house as well. Good evening, Nigel. For those of you that haven't already checked it out, go and check it out. While you're checking out my podcast, check out Nigel's From the Seat of the Cab. It's good. I like it. Peter McKenna says he can see me on YouTube, which is good news. Cracking video, says Steve Williamson. We've got an even better one coming up in just a second. But then the entries for tonight's competition start to roll in. Now, how many have we got? You currently have a 1 in 9 chance. But just quickly rattle through. Gary Muirhead says, "What an amazing story! Precisely why we wanted to capture it. I had a good. I had the pleasure of actually having lunch with Joe Keller the first day I was in the Czech Republic, and it was just one of those stories you think this is just too good to miss. In actual fact, let me show you something. I don't do this sort of thing very often, but that's me and Joe." A little bit starstruck I was because, as I say, he tells such a fantastic story. I just wish there was a few more people would do likewise. Do you imagine going back and sitting down with Lord Bamford, Sir Anthony Bamford, and getting to tell you about how his dad had built the first backhoe loader or the first telescopic handler? That's a conversation I'd love to have. Ken Hatcher says, fantastic story. Bobcat have come a long way, as you're about to see. Peter McKenna, it's a good question. What would you have named it if you'd invented it? I am very, very egotistical. So I think I'd have done exactly the same as Joe's uncle and his father. I'd have named it after myself, the Mark Loader, or something very similar. Let's have a look. Peter McKenna is going for the Mighty Mini XL. Mini XL, that's a oxymoron, isn't it? Kyle Perkin, good afternoon, good evening, Kyle. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Fantastic tool, Mark. Can't do without them. Definitely got to have some solid tires on a demo site. You're damn right you do. I'd have named it the multi-power loader, says Dan Cullen. Some good suggestions, but I'm quite like the Keller. This is a fantastic question from Gary Muirhead. You've got to wonder what other amazing inventions have been made in the shed, never seen the light of day. Yeah, I wonder what was lurking in the shed way back when. Gary Muirhead. Ken Hatcher says, Gary Muirhead, the Cat 330 hybrid was made in a shed by cat volunteers. I didn't know that. In a slightly different context, I do know that the original Chicken McNugget was actually made not by McDonald's itself, but by one of their franchisees. Read that in a book somewhere. Don't know whether it's true or not. Peter McKenna says he saw a similar machine to the original Keller loader on a farm in Derbyshire years ago. Yeah, I'm fairly sure there are still a few about. What I'm not sure entirely sure how well it came out in that video, but it does come out in the audio version if you'd like to listen to that. When Joe Keller went off in search of his family history, he was desperate to try and get hold of one of the original Keller loaders. He got the first. He managed to track down the first one and buy it back. It's now in his possession. Peter McKenna says skid steers are so versatile and fantastic when you're short on space. 100% agree. Gary Muirhead says, I wonder if it would ever have been made in today's age with all the health and safety and all the hoops you have to jump through these days. I have to say, one of the things that struck me about that Keller loader, did you see the rams and the arms very close to the operator? If the operator had stuck his arms out when that bucket was coming down, he'd have had no arms. It's a different time. I'm not judging. Love how emotional he is about his ancestors and of his spectacular achievement. You can't. I think, and I promise you, I wasn't trying to do this, but I think we actually brought Joe Keller to tears about 5 times during the filming of that. Every time he was talking about remembering things with his dad and stuff like that. But yeah, listen, it's his family history. And to look at Bobcat today, when he I don't think he'd actually been to the Czech Republic before, to actually stand there and look at what they had created from that little egg or that little acorn that his father and his uncle had created in the first place. Absolutely astonishing. I needed a change of underwear for the first time. So easy to tip with a full bucket. Okay, when you get used to it. Yeah, I think probably my second time on a skid steer loader, I did actually manage to deposit a bunch of topsoil on my head. I'm a terrible operator. I've mentioned that before. Big shed and welding gear would be my dream to have. I have some great ideas for attachments, but telling people these ideas to make, they just run off and never hear back. Something I won't do again. Yeah, and necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. So when you think about, some of the people we've got in the chat, like a Steve Williamson or a Gary Muirhead or a Ken Hatcher or a Peter McKenna, these people, they're living and breathing these things. They would come up with ideas that maybe the manufacturers wouldn't even occur to them. So big sheds is what you need. Truly, I believe no matter what other brands do, they will never exceed the reputation of Bobcat. I find it hard to argue with that. I can't actually think of a company that is so dominant in one particular type of machine. Obviously, back in the day, you'd have said JCB was dominant with the backhoe loader, but there's plenty of those out there now. But you think skid steer these days, you think Bobcat. It really is as straightforward as that. Cracker of a machine for you there, Gary. Let's have a look. Dancing Bobcats. They still do that. You might see some of that in just a second. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Mark. Not a problem at all. They use them on housing sites in the USA. Seen them working in Florida a few times. Yeah, they are almost universal in the States. Everybody has got a Bobcat. Even these days, we call a skid steer a Bobcat. It's like the Hoover. We do the hoovering. I'm not saying anybody's ever done the bobcatting, but the name and the brand are inseparable. There is the link to the audio interview with Joe Keller. I am going to get to the point in a second. Nigel Williams says, already listened to the audio only. Great chat and a super story. Thank you very much indeed for that, Nigel. I take that as an enormous compliment because, as I say, I'm a fan of your podcast as well. Peter McKenna is here after a grueling 12-hour shift. Funnily enough, I'm at 13 hours now. I wouldn't say mine is particularly grueling. I'm just sat on my arse, basically. I'm just having a wonderful dinner in Belper, says Dan Cullen. Good luck to you. Now, rattling through. Come on. I wish there was more videos like these. We're working on it. That's all I can say. We are working on it. Our friend Graham Footy Williams is in the house. Good evening to you, Graham. Hope you're fit and well, my friend. Steve Williamson says, skid steer with a greater load with GPS, absolute weapon. Totally agree. How come they are in the Czech Republic and not produced in USA early days? They are still very much produced in the USA, but I think for the European production, and I think there's a couple of products that they produce specifically for Europe here in Europe, but they've also got some US specific products, they produce over there. I'm sure there's some sense in it. What a life that guy has had. Yeah, absolutely right. Now, I have mentioned the fact that there is a prize up for grabs. Here's the final reminder. That is what she looks like. There are two of those in this office, and one of them is already in a box. The only thing that box is lacking right now is a name and an address label. So I've got a final film for you. And the final film is 2 minutes and 13 seconds in length. So that means you've got just over 2.5 minutes. I'm going to get that off the screen, first of all. You've got just over 2.5 minutes to type Keller into the chat. Keller for your chance of winning that that model. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find the right. Okay, I found it. I tucked the video away. So while Joe and I were talking about the machines of years gone by, my son Fred was wandering about the Czech Republic facility of Bobcat to check out the kit of tomorrow. So while you're taking the opportunity to enter our prize draw, here's a look at what the Bobcat future has in store. Here we go. That one seems to have ended all of a sudden. Don't know why that would be, but yes, I don't want this to turn into a Fred fest, but yes, he did do a fantastic job on that. Fred on video is one amazing cameraman. He's got talent. Keep up the fine work, sir. Big applause to Fred for that awesome video, says Steve Williamson. And Nick Drew getting in the way. Nick was actually our stunt driver for the day. Now, it is that time. Let's find out who has won the... now, let me see. That doesn't look right. Bear with me 1 second. That's not the one I want. That's the one I want. Yeah, I had the wrong view up. Now, let me see. How many did we end up with? We ended up with a nice round 10. No, we didn't. We ended up with a nice round 11. There was a few last-minute entries. In fact, I think Mark Whiting got in just under the wire, and I think, yes, Al Grierson from Luxembourg got in under the wire. In the nicest possible way, Al, I'd love you to win this, but I really don't want you to, because I know it's going to cost you an absolute bloody fortune to get it in the country. But thank you for entering anyway. So let me see if we can get this one rolling. Bear with me 2 seconds, and we're rolling now. Nigel Williams, plant operator to the nobility and podcaster to the king. Nigel Williams, you are now the proud owner of that. I tell you what, let's take that off the screen. You got Nigel. That, my friend, is yours. All I need is your postal address, and it won't be that one because there's one already in a box. Which kind of begs me to throw back to a comment from Steve Williamson, I think it was. Do I have a lot of models that I keep? No, I've always traditionally given them away. And since I started doing this show, I think I've tried to pick up more as a result of doing this show, but purely so I can give them away. There's a few bits and pieces of real nostalgia kicking about the place, like there's commemorative things from JCB, and there's a cat breaker here somewhere up here somewhere, and things like that. But by and large, no, I give all of them away. Some of them have gone to charity in the past, but by and large, they go to you, our audience. Ken Hatcher says that would have been a good demo day. Yeah, absolutely. It certainly was. There is Graham Williams. Rather have a T-shirt than I would a model. I did bring back a Bobcat T-shirt. Wear it all the time. Nick Drew. Yes, Nick Drew was not getting in the way. As Gary Muir has just said, our very own Mr. Drew. Yeah, he was there. He was driving. We were pointing cameras at him. It all worked out fine for everybody. Let's have a look. Mark Whiting, as I say, got under the wire, but didn't win this time. But good evening to you, Mark. Steve Williamson, need to try to get to these demo days. You really do. Listen, I'm not saying this. There is no money changing hands here. Just so you know, I've done this one for Bobcat purely because I thought it was a story worth sharing. But if ever you get an invitation to go to a Bobcat demo day, stop what you're doing and get on the plane. It really is that good, honestly. There is Al Grierson from Czech Republic. I've just saved you from a bill, or more specifically, Nigel Williams has saved you from a big import bill. There's lots of congratulations going on there. There is Al saying congratulations, Nigel. Dan Cullen says congrats, Nigel. Peter McKenna says the same. Gary Muirhead says the same. You really do need an imagination for making these videos. I think one of the things that and I've mentioned this before, I think one of the things that Fred brings to the party is the fact that he's not of this world. I'm not saying he's an alien, but he doesn't come from this background. So he does tend to look at these things with a completely fresh set of eyes. And hanging around with him, I'll remember very specifically, we were on a site once, and it was a demolition site, and there was a piece of dangling concrete. It was hanging on by a piece of rebar, and this thing was just sort of wobbling away. And I know that's the kind of shot that Fred likes to get because it adds atmosphere and stuff. So I said to him, have you spotted? And he just looked at me like, of course I've spotted it, and of course I filmed it, absolutely, and that's what makes his stuff so much better than mine. Let's have a look. Glenn Johnson says congratulations, Nigel. Nigel Williams says, oh my gosh. See, we aim to please. Dan Cullen says, believe it or not, if I'd won, ask you to send it to Nigel Williams, Nigel, as a congratulations in his achievement. Well, I've saved you the trouble. I'll pick it over best and make sure I give you the new house. So I finally bought the house. Get my keys on Monday. Do me a favor then, Nigel. This weekend, go out and buy yourself a shelf. Go and buy yourself a shelf and plonk that in the middle of it just as soon as it arrives. Or maybe not. Dan Cullen. Now me and Nigel Williams own Bobcats. Thanks to Mark. Well, you know, these are the things we do. In actual fact, as I say, there are two more Bobcat models around. There's another one of those. There's also one of. Oh, that's not the right way around. Let's do it the right way around. There you are. There's one of those still sat on my desk. What is that? It's an S750 skid steer loader. That'll be up for grabs at some point in the not too distant future. I need your help as well. Does anyone know of a suitable charity to whom I could donate that? I brought that let me try that into the microphone. I actually brought that back from Sweden about a year ago, and it's been sat under a table ever since, because I've been meaning to come up with somewhere sensible to hand it over. I mean, I could auction it off, possibly, if people would be interested in that, and then give the money to charity. But if anybody knows of, I can't even think what it would be, like a construction-related charity for children. I don't know. That's a possibility. Alderhay Children's Hospital, yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we've got a bit closer to home. I've got Great Ormond Street, not a million miles away from me. But just wondered if anybody knows. Yeah, we've actually done something with Charlie before, through Lucani, actually, and he does love plant. just think that's the sort of thing. Maybe a bunch of children would get more out of that than just one. Maybe I'm putting too much thought into it. Children with cancer is another one. Yeah, I'm going to love you and leave you in a second, so I'll let you get back to your evenings. But if anybody comes up with any bright ideas of where we could actually send that or hand that over in the next couple of weeks, then we'll do that. I've cleared the desk out, or I've cleared the office out as well. There's a new table going in there. It's not a new table, it's an old table. Actually, it's going to go in there so we can actually put some stuff on there and maybe even do a different camera angle and stuff like that at some point in the future. I'll bore you with that at some point. Children's hospice, yeah, that's a possibility. There's a place quite close to where I live. I'm not bigging myself up. This was just pure bloody fluke and stuff. Years ago, when my eldest daughter was but a little one, I was in Regent Street in London. I went into the Disney store to buy at the time it was a Mickey Mouse as big as her, and they were doing like a buy one get one free. So I thought, well, sod it, I'll buy two and I'll get two free. And we took two of the others, gave two to my daughter, but then took the other two up to it's children with sort of learning difficulties and very special needs. I mean, to the point where their parents literally can't cope with them. I took them up, and it was literally like I'd given them the crown jewels. I don't think they'd get a huge amount out of that, though. That's a bit of an issue. Great evening, time for food. Good night all. Have a good evening. Peter, I won't be far behind you. Keller, oh shit, I thought you said tell her late to the party as normal. I need to enunciate a little bit better. Bloody phone died just before the draw. Was glued to the video. Didn't notice the battery was 1%. See, I am a granter of wishes with models, and I'm a destroyer of iPhones as well. Enjoy Peter McKenna. Chat soon, says Dan Cullen. Gary Muirhead says another fantastic Wednesday night show. What's happening next week? Nothing. I'm kind of going into a bit of a summer recess. But I am very, very aware of just how popular these things are. So my plan is to reach out to a few more manufacturers. We do have some bits and pieces coming up in the not too distant future with some big names. I mean, for one, I'm going to Senebogen in the not too distant future. So that's going to be one. We'll do a special for that. But I'd love to do some more. I'd love to do some special evenings dedicated to a single brand because people seem to like them. Watch this space. We'll keep you keep you informed. Love your Bobcat hat. Yeah, that's going back on the wall, as are the Bobcat glasses. I don't know how well you can see that. There you go. No, wrong side. There you go. Can you see that? Bobcat. And that's what the eyes look like after 13 hours in front of a computer. Any date for the marathon shows? Marathon show will be in September. I need to confirm with Mrs. Demolition News when she's going to be away, because I'm going to fire up the computer one Saturday while she's swanning about in Greece, and I'm just going to roll until I can't speak any longer. Could go on a while, that one. Do one every night. It's better than sitting watching EastEnders. Steve? I don't know. I'm fairly sure, newlywed as you are, you've got a life. I don't have a life. That's absolutely true. But I do need to go and live a bit. So no, we'll do something else. Looking forward to the marathon show. Yeah, so am I. It'd be interesting to see just how long we can drag this nonsense out. I reckon I'm good for 4 hours, but we shall see. We shall see. And what I'm planning to do when I finally get around to doing it, I'm planning it as we speak. When I finally get around to doing it, the idea is that I'm going to break it down into half-hour chunks. So it might be a half an hour on technology, half an hour with an interview, half an hour looking at a certain subject or whatever it might be. So even if you can't be there for all 4 hours or however long we go for, or even if you just want to dip in and dip out, we will pre-publish what those time slots are. So even if you just want to dip in and watch a bit that you're really interested in, you can do that. But I'll keep you posted. Still a few months to go on that. And I have got a bit of travel to do. I'm off to Sicily in about 2.5 weeks. I've got to get back to Italy. I've also got to get back to Germany as well. So September sometime. We will chat you tomorrow morning. Have a great evening. Double congrats, Nigel Williams. Well said. You should give us a quiz to do for Marathon Show and give us the results. Oh, now there is a thought. There is a thought. I tell you what, I've cleared my desk. I haven't actually got any paper in front of me now. I'm going to write that down when I finished here, and we're going to do a quiz on the Marathon Show. We will dedicate half an hour to a plant and equipment quiz. Watch this space. And we will name it. We will name it after Steve Williamson, who came up with a brilliant idea. The Steve Williamson Plant Quiz. There you go. I've got to write that down or I will forget. Right, everybody, listen, it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure as always. That's 47 and a half, nearly 48 minutes of your life you're not getting back. Go do your evenings. Go and have a nice time. Send my regards to your families for allowing you to duck out and do this old nonsense. Nigel, don't forget to let me have your address. I'll get that on the box tomorrow, and I'll get it in the post for you. And if you want to hold off a day or two so that it arrives after you've moved in, fully understand. But let me have that address, and I'll get that over to you. But keep watching, people, because there's more models to give away, more stuff to give away. As a result of the clear out, I've discovered some more hats that I was planning to give away that I never got around to. So keep watching. But until then, everybody, have a fantastic evening. Thanks for everything, and thanks to Joe Keller for giving us the time for that brilliant interview. See you all soon. All the best.